pleasure of laying before this honorable chamber a motion of no confidence in the Chief Secretary, Kelvin Charles. And I read, whereas January 26, 2018 represents 1 year since the PNM-led Executive Council has been inaugurated, and whereas by a series of actions, and more importantly inactions, this PNM-led Executive Council, under the leadership of the Chief Secretary, has aided and abetted in the continual demise of the Tobago economy via the strategic dismantling of the air and sea bridge, the private sector, which includes tourism industry, the agricultural industry, and the distribution sector, among others. And whereas the people of Tobago have suffered immensely due to the inactions of the Chief Secretary, coupled with the mismanagement of funds allotted to Tobago House of Assembly, the refusal to follow the rule of law and account judiciously for monies allotted, and non-payment of several classes of workers. And whereas the Office of the Chief Secretary has refused to equip the Minority Council with an office and staff and the much needed resources to ensure that democracy remains at the helm of our governance structure in a continuous attempt to return the THA to a system of no opposition, thereby being able to effectively debate and clinically respond to matters of Tobago interest, be it resolved, Madam Presiding Officer, be it resolved today that this House confirm its loss of confidence in the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly. I want to talk about crime. When we said crime was a priority, we felt the Assembly Police was a priority. Nothing was done. Not even a bill for a whole year the Chief Secretary spent here. Not a bill was moved in the House. Not one single bill. They hire a number of lawyers up there, number of technocrats, not one Assembly bill. A set of jokey motions, styrofoam, eating healthy, as if to say we were uneducated people and the business of Tobago was trivial. As if to say that crime was on the rise. So much so that in the month of November, that's right, in the month of November, when they had a police meeting, the most senior police officer on the island, Mr. Moore, he said that, I want to quote, he said, murders are 200% on the increase. I went through the statistics, and for 100 years, that was the highest. Thanks to the new Chief Secretary. For 100 years under your watch, crime got out of control. At that point in time, there were 8 murders in the island. 8 murders. 200%. November. By the time December came, there were 12. 4 more. 4 more. And he's comfortable with that. What plans, when we ask him what plans he put in place, somewhere on the newspaper articles, he said that he's meeting with stakeholders and then he will meet with the community. Which community did you go to? Who did you interact with? No one but your choir of 13. I want to say crime has an impact on the economy, a direct impact. And this is one of the reasons why the economy in Tobago is going down and down and down. No one wants to invest in an area where murders are the order of the day. They remove, under his watch, they remove what is called the Community Comfort Patrol. These were people who were unarmed, patrolling the streets. They would help people who can't get the police, do different things, assisting people, bringing comfort to the lives of ordinary Tobagonians. But as they removed that, crime was shot up in the country some 300%. And he's untroubled by it, because his body is here with me, but his mind is on another side of town. That's what's going on. And this is why we are calling a no confidence motion in the Chief Secretary.
So when you want to talk about confidence, deal with your structure, put an executive in place. You even have a constitution. Let's talk actions, Madam Presiding Officer, because the motion says, and whereas by a series of actions, and more importantly, inactions. You see, they have no confidence in this administration, Madam Presiding Officer, no confidence in this Chief Secretary, who, when he took office, we had a situation where our quarry here in Tobago, described as a gold mine, described as one of the largest quarries in this part of the world, was very unproductive, producing very little, staffed with over 100 employees. What is the situation today, Madam Presiding Officer? 26 employees. Both plants operating as efficiently as possible. Productivity, Madam Presiding Officer. Delivery, Madam Presiding Officer. Truckers no longer have to line up for weeks to wait for material. And that is the situation today at the quarry. And they have no confidence in that. But you know what they had confidence in? The lies that all the employees in the quarry will be sent home. The lies that we're selling out the quarry. The lies that the quarry will be privatized to some businessman in Trinidad. They had confidence in that, Madam Presiding Officer. The all-important issue of the land titles. Of course, in collaboration with the central government, this PNM-led THE administration, we have a situation now where that bill will be going before the Parliament this year. And therefore, all Tobagonians affected by this issue, where land titles are not clear, where land titles are tied up, will soon be dealt with. And therefore, Tobagonians in those situations will have access to their lands, and they'll be able to go to banks and get loans and mortgages, etc. Thanks to this administration. They have no confidence in that. But they have confidence in the lies that the minority leader will put in this motion about us not giving him an office. But the truth is, an office was allotted to the minority leader.
Madam Presiding Officer, it is no secret that the tourism sector in Tobago has been constrained by a number of factors. However, Madam Presiding Officer, Secretary, we will not lose sight of the opportunities that lie ahead. We know that our collaboration with stakeholders is critical and necessary for us to turn around the sector. This will definitely not involve, Madam Presiding Officer, referring to stakeholders, business entities and representatives as sellouts when they openly agree to decisions that they are very much aware will help the sector to get firmly back on track. Nevertheless, Madam Presiding Officer, the Division of Tourism, Culture and Transportation has made notable strides over the past year in delivering on its mandate to boost the tourism sector. And I'll just go through them quickly, Madam Presiding Officer. As part of our manifesto promise in the THA elections of 2017 to the people of Tobago was the establishment of the Tobago Tourism Agency. And I remember during my 3rd week in office and with the insistence of the Honorable Chief Secretary, the Tobago Tourism Agency was formally established. I moved to the division launching the Fort King George Interactive Museum as a new product offering, and this project was another key initiative resulting from the incorporation of culture to the division. And this reenactment, Madam Presiding Officer, has attracted scores of visitors locally and internationally. and the intent is to monetize this activity and eventually outsource to a private entity for operations to encourage entrepreneurial development. Madam Presiding Officer, in order to create structure and balance, each division was requested by the Chief Secretary to submit its 180-day work plan, and this work plan will allow for better management of resources, projects, and facilitate more effective monitoring and evaluation. And so it is very clear to all of us, Madam Presiding Officer, that with good leadership, we are making progress and we are doing more with less.
This Chief Secretary, even in December, up until now, has still been allowing his secretary with responsibility for health to treat the workers at that division with scant courtesy.
Sure.
In fact, they have been begging. They have been pleading. Some of them have cried. I have personally seen some of them cry because of the mistreatment that they have been getting. And, Chief Secretary, you have sat silent and allowed your Secretary for Health to keep mistreating these workers. Madam Presiding Officer, let me just interject a little bit with that. Because what they continue to not see is that what they did was take approximately 250 people and try to stick them into a building that could only comfortably hold 150 people. Wow. And please, if I am wrong, stand on a point of order and correct me.
Wow.
That is what they did. And that is why, up to now, up to today, these workers still have not been paid. Yes, okay, so a fancy press release came out and said 1 fortnight. But 1 fortnight being paid when you are owed 4 is still no payment. And this Chief Secretary stood back and allowed that to happen and said nothing. Even when my colleague asked him about late payments, he pretended he did not know that there were scores of Tobagonians who were not being paid then. Tobagonians are watching. That building that they went into had no telephone, no internet, no computer setup, and they knew that, knowing that the pay system needed those things, knowing that the division pay system was based on an electronic system, Madam Presiding Officer, and they sat and did nothing. Tobagonians are suffering because of it, and this Chief Secretary still sits and does nothing. No, let me not say he does nothing. What they did agree on is to allow the rent of that building to go from $217,930,000 a month up to $323,850 a month. And I am asking, I am sure the rent for that building has been paid, while the workers have not been paid. This Chief Secretary allowed that to happen.
How dare anyone fathom the audacity to be able to come to this house, Madam Presiding Officer, and decree and declare a vote of no confidence on a man who has done nothing but provide transparent, honest, and integral leadership for the people of Tobago because he's concerned about their development, while at the same time arguing that this is a place of decision and serious decisions must be taken in this house. Madam Presiding Officer, might I remind you and the people of Tobago that when a critical, serious decision had to be taken here, they decided to walk out and parade themselves in James Park with a set of sheep, trying to pray that the more shepherd than the psalmist David could lead the people of Tobago like lambs before the slaughter. We are standing in defense because we have a leader of whom we are proud. You see, Madam Presiding Officer, the other thing I want to challenge before I jump into it. You see this thing about about the no code of conduct, the no code of conduct, and after 12 months we have. Might I remind this House that it is the minority bench and the members of the minority who chose to not lend support to the establishment of a code of conduct because they are not by nature subject to the rule of law.
With a motion of no confidence, there are two substantive issues. Whether the current leader of the ruling majority in the House is unfit to lead and has lost the majority support, one. And two, whether the leader of the opposition, or in our case, the minority leader or the leader of the opposition bench, is suitable to lead the government. And Madam Presiding Officer, that is the gist of a no confidence motion. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, a no confidence motion in its nature is implying, as one of my colleagues mentioned before as well, that the current leader should be replaced by the opposition. And in this context, Madam Presiding Officer, this motion has presented us with an opportunity to evaluate not only the stewardship and leadership qualities of the Chief Secretary, but has also given us an opportunity to evaluate the leadership qualities of the members opposite. Madam Presiding Officer, a motion of no confidence at this time also presupposes that at some time prior, the confidence which was held by the population, that this confidence has since been lost. And if we evaluate, if I have analyzed this quite correctly, Madam Presiding Officer, then I must commend my colleagues who started off the debate, starting with Assemblyman Ansel Dennis and all the other colleagues, my other colleagues, because they have, as a motion of no confidence requires, given us sound, honest, and a clear assessment, not only of the stewardship of the Chief Secretary, but also of the minority leader and the minority bench. Because I have to put it out there so that persons listening and wondering what took place today could understand clearly what is needed in a motion of no confidence.
We had people who say it's our money. I don't know that the money belongs to any secretary inside here. The money belongs to the people of Tobago. And how dare a secretary could stand in this house and say, don't ask me about rent. Don't ask me about the monies we're spending because it's our money. No, it's not our money, as in the secretary's money or PNM's money. It is the money, the monies and the resources belong to all the people of Tobago. Even more reason why we can't have confidence. How is it that people could be secretaries and don't want to be asked any question? Don't ask you any question. Don't critique what you're doing. Don't disagree. Don't say anything adverse, because I must be left to do what I want. And what is coming out quite clear from this debate, Madam Presiding Officer, is that loyalty is to the People's National Movement and not to the people of Tobago. This is a case of 13 versus 60,000.
Yes.
That's what it is.
That's what it is.
That is exactly what it is. And I wish to warn members opposite, because I have friends on the other side too. I don't know if they're still calling me their friend, because they might realize now that I'm plain spoken. But I want to warn them that not because you won a vote convincingly a year ago, it means that Tobagonians feel the same way about you now. Times have changed. and a shifting is happening. And evidently, those on the other side are still locked in a world by themselves, a delusional world, almost pathologically delusional, thinking somehow we are the best thing since sliced bread. Perhaps even better than a slice of fresh fish up in Charlottesville. So good. Clearly, some folks' ears have not met the ground. Clearly, some folks' feet have not met the ground. People required hope. We have workers on this island who were not paid for months. From November, they weren't paid. We have workers on this ground. Today makes it 4 fortnights that salaries have been late. We could only boast about giving 1 fortnight salary that accounts up to the 14th of December. More than a month later, and people cannot get salaries. And you will say, they will get paid though. Nonchalantly, they will get paid though. Is that what we are going to tell single mothers who are dependent on that? Fathers who must mind their entire family on that? You'll get paid though. Whole strain, you'll get paid though. Dismissively. Not even a sense of hope. And I want to say it in this house. I was elected by people, and therefore I don't need to be a member of a union, to represent a union, to represent anybody on this island. I don't need that as permission. I will represent anybody on this island who requires representation.
Madam Presiding Officer, I'm pleased to report that despite the efforts of the minority, and by the way, it was not only the minority leader, because they seem to like James Park. It seems that whenever Assemblyman Augustine is not getting enough likes on Facebook, he jumps out and does a live or holds a press conference. And he would have gone on to make claims about illegal operations at the quarry. Madam Presiding Officer, we started getting calls, or we started losing calls from persons who wanted to aggregate from the quarry. We were beginning to lose business. We had to send a convoy to Trinidad to salvage business. Madam Presiding Officer, I'm pleased to report that not only did all of the Studley Park workers have their jobs maintained, all 151 of them. Madam Presiding Officer, they also received 3 fortnights pay as an incentive for moving. And before we come to this, hold on. They didn't only get the regular salary because they kept their job, and the 3 fortnights incentive, they got it all before Christmas time too. So we stand here talking about who didn't get paid and who didn't get paid, but the reality is we now have a situation where there's one division where public servants or members of the PSA are deliberately giving trouble to the political directorate, undermining the political directorate because of the leadership of the minority leader / PSA president. So he's using his position to undermine the work that we are trying to do, the legitimate work for the business of Tobagonians. And then the minority member, Assemblyman Farley Augustine, has the gumption to talk about he could go and be a part of a protest action by a union. What kind of nonsense is that? That is not the way that Tobago people do their business. Madam Presiding Officer, in spite of the efforts of the minority, we have been able to double, 200% increase in the production of aggregate at the Studley Park Enterprise Limited. No more lineups for the truckers. They go, they get their aggregate, and they leave. The airport, the ANR airport runway rehabilitation can continue as planned because we have now done what Tobagonians have put us here to do. We are getting things right. And Madam Presiding Officer, I dare to say after the interventions, just last week, we started shipping boulders down to Trinidad, armored rock for them to start doing work on coastal protection in Trinidad. So we're now exporting from Tobago to Trinidad as well. And there's more to come, Madam Presiding Officer. There's more to come. Madam Presiding Officer, imagine last year, 2017, as a Tobagonian, we were all worried here. 12 murders were recorded.
And the point that was made that we kept a commitment to maintain employment levels is not to be taken lightly enough. And in fact, the minority leader is a beneficiary of that. And let me tell you why. I am sure if you talk to your shadow Minister of Finance or your shadow Secretary of Finance, he will show you the link. And may I say, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer, that I have no quarrel with the member Farley. He knows that we have our differences, but he knows we will have had very fruitful conversations. As a matter of fact, the member would have complimented me once, but I didn't have time to look for it. When I was presiding officer, yes, he talked about my capacity for innovation and bringing the Assembly legislature out of the dark ages. But I could understand why he is saying what he's saying at this time. Yes. But let me place on record, as I've said several times, I am about the development of the island of Tobago. And wherever talent avails itself, I shall use such talent. But let me make the point, Mr. Deputy Presiding Officer. Let me make the point. I do not know that all three members qualify. But as I was saying, Mr. Presiding Officer, Deputy Presiding Officer, as we maintain employment levels, those who are members of his union, who are able to keep their jobs, are therefore able to continue paying their dues to the union. And therefore there is then a predictable source of inflow to your union to afford you the luxurious life that you continue to live. So you should be thanking me. You should be thanking me. It is so good when the minority leader can be magnanimous. The thing about that, I will deal with that in another way. I wasn't ready for that, but since he raised it, let me demonstrate that I could respond. Yes. What that speaks to is the whole issue of accountability. And I have made the point on more than one occasion that accountability is not only for the politicians. Accountability must run through every facet of Tobago and at every level. So you've been paid to do a work, you do it properly, and you must be accountable for the results.
So members, the question is, whereas January 26, 2018 represents 1 year since this PNM-led Executive Council has been inaugurated, and whereas by a series of actions and more importantly inactions, this PNM-led Executive Council under the leadership of the Chief Secretary has aided and abetted in the continual demise of the Tobago economy by the strategic dismantling of 1, the air and sea bridge, 2, the private sector, which includes the tourism industry, the agricultural industry, the distribution sector, among others. And whereas the people of Tobago have suffered immensely due to the inaction of the Chief Secretary, coupled with the mismanagement of the funds allotted to the Tobago House of Assembly, the refusal to follow the rule of law and account judiciously for the monies allotted, and non-payment of several classes of workers. And whereas the office of the Chief Secretary has refused to equip the Minority Council with an office, staff, and the much-needed resources to ensure that democracy remains at the helm of our governance structure, in a continuous attempt to return the THA to a system of no opposition, thereby not being able to effectively debate and clinically respond to the matters of Tobago's interests, be it resolved that this House confirm its loss of confidence in the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly. Those in favor say aye. 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 Those against say no. No! 13 votes against the motion, 3 votes for it. Therefore, the motion has been defeated.